During a family vacation, I discovered my wife secretly texting my best friend. Furious, she yelled. "He treats me better than you," I quietly replied. "That's why I invited him here." Shocked, she turned around as he walked in and said, "I told him everything." She collapsed as I handed her divorce papers and took the kids home. I never thought my marriage would end like this. We had been married for 12 years. We had 2 kids. We had a home. A life. And somehow, it all fell apart in the middle of a family vacation. It started with a gut feeling, the kind you try to ignore because you don't want to believe it. My wife, Sarah, had been acting different for months. Distant. Cold. Always on her phone. Smiling at texts she'd never let me see. Disappearing into another room to take calls. I asked her about it a few times, and every time, she brushed it off. "It's just work. You're being paranoid. Why are you so insecure all of a sudden?" So I let it go. Or at least, I pretended to. Because the truth was, I didn't want to know. I didn't want to believe that my wife, the woman I had built a life with, could betray me. Then came the vacation. A week in Maui. Just us and the kids, a much-needed break. A chance to reconnect. At least, that's what I told myself. Looking back, I think I already knew. I think a part of me was hoping that if I got her away from whatever had been keeping her so distracted, maybe we'd find our way back to each other. That didn't happen. We landed in Maui late in the afternoon. The kids were excited. The resort was beautiful. It should have been perfect. But something felt off. Sarah barely looked at me. She barely spoke to me. She was glued to her phone. Even at dinner, sitting across from me at a beachside restaurant, she was scrolling. Typing. Smiling at something on the screen. I watched her fingers move, fast, like she was deep in conversation. I took a sip of my beer, trying to push the feeling down. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. She looked up, just for a second, then back at her phone. "Emily." "Lie." I forced a smile. "Tell her I said hi." She nodded but didn't type anything. Didn't pass the message along. That was the moment I knew, without a doubt, that something was wrong. After dinner, we went back to our room. The kids fell asleep quickly. Sarah got into bed and turned away from me, her phone still in her hand. She wasn't scrolling anymore. She was waiting. Watching. Like she was expecting something. I stared at the ceiling, my heart pounding. I couldn't let it go this time. I got up, walked out onto the balcony, and pulled out my phone. I opened our cell phone account and checked the text logs. Her most frequent contact? Jason. Jason. My best friend. Hundreds of messages. Calls. Every day. Every night. I stood there, staring at his name, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I needed proof. I needed to see it for myself. I walked back inside. Sarah was still on her side, her phone glowing softly in the dark. I sat down beside her. "Let me see your phone." She stiffened. "What?" "Your phone. Let me see it." She rolled over, looking at me for the first time in what felt like weeks. "Why?" I stared at her. "You know why." She sat up, gripping the phone tight. "This is crazy. You're acting." I reached for it. She yanked it away. "Jesus, Mark, what the hell is wrong with you?" I didn't say anything. I just pulled out my own phone, scrolled through my contacts, and hit dial. Her screen lit up. Jason calling. Her face went pale. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then I hung up. Silence. She swallowed hard, her hands shaking. "I can explain." I nodded, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "Go ahead." She didn't speak. I waited. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. Shook her head like I was the idiot. "You know what? Yeah. Fine. I have been talking to him. Because he actually listens to me. Because he actually makes me feel like I matter." My stomach turned to stone. She stood up, shaking, her face twisted in anger. "He treats me better than you ever have." The words hit like a hammer to the chest. I just stared at her. "That's so?" She folded her arms, chin up, defiant. "Yeah. It is." I nodded. Took a deep breath. "That's why I invited him here." Her face dropped. I walked to the door. Opened it. Jason stepped inside. Sarah turned, blinking fast, like her brain couldn't catch up to what was happening. Jason wouldn't meet my eyes. His hands were stuffed into his pockets. He looked like a guilty teenager caught sneaking in past curfew. "I told him everything," Jason mumbled. Sarah stumbled back like she'd been slapped. "You what?" I walked past them both, grabbed my suitcase, and started packing. She turned back to me, her voice shaking. Mark, wait, please, I ignored her. Jason just stood there, useless. I grabbed my kids' bags. My hands were steady now. Sarah stepped in front of me. Mark, we need to talk about this. I looked her dead in the eye. There's nothing left to talk about. And then I walked out. I walked out of that hotel room with my kids, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear Sarah's shaky breaths, the way she whispered Jason's name like he was supposed to fix this for her. The elevator ride down was silent. My kids were still half asleep, confused. My oldest, Oliver, rubbed his eyes. Dad? Where are we going? Home, I said. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't happening yet. Because as much as I wanted to get on the next flight and never see her again, I had to be smart. We were in Maui. The kids had no idea what was going on. I wasn't going to rip them out of this place in the middle of the night with no explanation. I got them settled in another room at the resort, turned on a movie, and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands locked together. My mind was racing. I had the divorce papers ready. That part was easy. But leaving like this, just disappearing with the kids, it would be a fight. She'd try to stop me. She'd play the victim. She'd make me look like the bad guy. I needed leverage. So I made a call. Not to my lawyer. Not yet. I called Emily. Sarah's best friend. The one she had pretended to be texting. Emily answered on the third ring. Hey, Mark, kind of late, I know everything. I cut in. There was a beat of silence. Then a slow, cautious. What do you mean? I mean I know about Sarah and Jason. I caught her. I confronted her. And now I need to know what else you know. Emily let out a long breath. Jesus Christ. I waited. Hi, Mark, listen, I've been biting my tongue for months. I didn't want to be involved in this, but she's been reckless. She told me things I wish I never heard. It's not just Jason. My grip tightened on the phone. Say that again. Emily hesitated. She's been talking to other guys too. I don't know how far it went, but it wasn't just Jason. He was just the one she got attached to. I stood up too fast. The blood rushed to my head. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to stay calm. You have proof? I have texts. Screenshots. I saved them because I don't know. I felt guilty knowing and not saying anything. But Mark, she's not gonna go down easy. She's gonna fight you for those kids. I know. And now, I had the ammunition to make sure she didn't win. The next morning, I walked back to our room. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I needed to be the one in control of the situation. When I opened the door, Sarah was sitting on the bed, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Jason was gone. She looked up at me, her hands twisting in her lap. Where are the kids? Safe. Her lip trembled. Mark, please, just listen to me. I walked past her and grabbed my suitcase. You lost the right to ask me for anything. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Sarah, I said quietly, you're gonna sign those papers. Her breath hitched. You can't take the kids from me. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my messages, and turned the screen toward her. The screenshots Emily had sent. Messages from Jason. Messages from other men. All of it, right there in black and white. Her face drained of color. I leaned in, my voice calm. I can and I will. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I turned and walked out the door. But I knew this wasn't over yet. I thought I had her backed into a corner. I thought showing her the proof, laying it all out, would be enough. But I underestimated her. Sarah wasn't going to go down without a fight. I spent the morning with the kids, keeping everything normal. I took them to breakfast, walked with them on the beach, let them build sandcastles while I sat there, staring at the ocean, trying to plan my next move. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to. I picked up. Hello? Mark. It was Jason. I clenched my jaw. What do you want? She's saying you kidnapped the kids. I went completely still. What? He sighed, sounding just as exhausted as I felt. Sarah's at the front desk right now. She told them you took the kids without telling her and that she's worried for their safety. They're calling the police. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the ground. Jason, listen to me, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I didn't kidnap them. I booked another room for the night so they wouldn't hear us fighting. I know, he muttered. But she's spinning it. Saying you just took off and didn't tell her where you were going. I looked over at my kids, completely unaware of the storm brewing. I gotta go, I said, hanging up. I grabbed Oliver's hand and called for my youngest, Ava. Come on, guys, we're going to see Mommy. They whined, asking why, but I didn't have time to explain. I needed to fix this before it got out of hand. I rushed to the lobby, my heart hammering. And there she was. Standing at the front desk, her arms crossed, her voice just loud enough for everyone around her to hear. I just don't know where he took them, she said, her voice thick with fake concern. I woke up and they were gone. He's been acting so strange lately. I just want to make sure they're safe. The woman behind the counter nodded, all sympathy. She was already dialing a number. Probably the cops. I walked up behind Sarah. They're fine, I said, my voice like ice. She spun around, her face twisting in shock before she smoothed it out into something softer, something calculated. Mark, she breathed, eyes flicking to the kids. Where were you? I looked her dead in the eyes. In the room I booked when I walked out last night. You know, after you admitted to screwing my best friend. A few people in the lobby turned to stare. Sarah's face went red. The front desk woman hesitated, her hands still on the phone. Ma'am, is this true? Sarah laughed, actually laughed, and shook her head. He's making things up. He's been paranoid for months. I think he might be having a breakdown. My jaw tightened. She was good. I had to give her that. She turned to the front desk again, her voice soft, fragile. I just don't want to escalate this. I only wanted to make sure the kids were okay. I pulled out my phone and held it up. Good thing I recorded that conversation we had last night then, I said, my voice calm. Sarah froze. Her eyes flicked to my phone. She didn't know if I was bluffing. And I wasn't about to tell her. I turned to the woman behind the desk. We're good here. The woman nodded, clearly unsure of what to do. Sarah's nostrils flared, her eyes burning into me. I had won this round. But I could feel it. She wasn't done. I kept the kids close for the rest of the day. I knew she wasn't going to try anything while we were still at the resort, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. And I was right. That night, after the kids were asleep, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number, you should talk to Jason again. You don't know everything. I frowned. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Me, who is this? No answer. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What didn't I know? I debated ignoring it. Moving on. Then I called Jason. He picked up on the second ring. Mark, I save it. I cut in. What else is there? What am I missing? Silence. Then, a long sigh. She told me she was leaving you. I gripped the phone tighter. She what? She told me months ago. She said you were controlling, that you were cold, that you didn't love her anymore. She said she was going to leave and she wanted to be with me. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. She planned this? I asked, my voice low. Jason hesitated. I don't know, man. I thought she meant it. But then, every time she talked about actually leaving, she backed out. Said she needed more time. That she was waiting for the right moment. The right moment. Like maybe she wanted me to be the one to leave first. So she could play the victim. So you were just going to wait it out? I asked, my voice dripping with anger. I swear, man, I didn't know it would get this far. I didn't know she'd. I hung up. I sat there, staring at the floor, trying to process it. She wasn't just cheating. She had been planning this. Calculating every move. And I had played right into it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah. The way she had lied to me. The way she had planned this, like I was just some obstacle she needed to get rid of. And Jason, my best friend, the guy who was supposed to have my back, had known this was coming. Had helped it happen. I had wasted years of my life on these people. I wasn't going to waste one more second. The next morning, I packed up the kids and checked out of the resort. I didn't tell Sarah. I didn't need to. She'd figure it out when she walked into an empty hotel room. I had one last thing to do before I left. I texted Jason. Meet me in the lobby. Now. No response. I texted again. You owe me this much. 5 minutes later, he showed up. He looked like hell. He hadn't shaved, his shirt was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Mark, man. I didn't let him finish. I stepped right up to him, close enough that he had to tilt his head to look me in the eye. Tell me the truth, I said, my voice low. He swallowed hard. I already told you everything. I shook my head. No, you haven't. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the unknown numbers text, and held it up. Who else is she screwing, Jason? His whole body tensed. And that was it. That was all I needed. He knew. Jesus, I muttered, stepping back. Jason ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting around like he was looking for an escape. I don't know, man. She told me she was done with all that she just wanted me. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. Yeah? How's that working out for you? Jason had no answer. I turned away, heading for the exit. But of course, that's when Sarah showed up. She must have seen my name on the checkout list. Or maybe she just felt it happening. Either way, she stormed into the lobby like she had rehearsed this moment 100 times. Mark! She called out. I kept walking. She grabbed my arm. Mark, stop! I turned, my voice calm. What do you want, Sarah? She flinched. Maybe because I had never said her name like that before. Like she was a stranger. She glanced at Jason, then back at me. Can we talk? Alone? I laughed again. Jason took a step back, looking like he desperately wanted to be anywhere else. I shrugged. Sure. Sarah led me outside onto a quiet part of the resort's patio. The ocean was right there, waves crashing against the shore. It was beautiful. Peaceful. Too bad I'd always remember it as the place where I finally saw my wife for who she really was. She crossed her arms. I know you're mad. No, I said. Mad was last night. Mad was months ago when I started noticing things. Now I'm just done. She sucked in a sharp breath. Mark, please. I know I messed up. But we can fix this. Fix what? I snapped. You've been sleeping with multiple guys, Sarah. You planned this. You told Jason you were leaving me before you even had the guts to say it to my face. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I nodded. That's what I thought. She looked down, rubbing her temples like she was the one who had been blindsided. I felt like I was drowning, Mark. You stopped looking at me the way you used to. You stopped wanting me. I felt something twist inside me. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. Marriage hadn't been easy. Work, kids, stress, it all got in the way. Maybe I had stopped being the man I was when we first got married. But that didn't give her the right to destroy me. You could have talked to me, I said. You could have left if you were so unhappy. But you wanted me to be the bad guy, didn't you? Her lips parted. I shook my head. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed them. Her whole body tensed. The kids? Yeah. The kids. The ones you didn't give a damn about when you were sneaking around behind their father's back. Tears welled up in her eyes. Mark, please. I took a deep breath. I already booked flights for me and the kids. We're leaving. Her eyes went wide. No. You can't just take them from me. I can and I will, I said. I have enough proof to bury you in court. You want to fight? Let's fight. She stared at me, breathing hard. Then, something changed. Her shoulders slumped. She wiped her face, smearing mascara across her cheek. Fine, she whispered. I wasn't expecting her to break that fast. She looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, she actually looked scared. Not angry. Not defiant. Just scared. I should have felt bad. I didn't. You win, she said softly. No, I said, shaking my head. Nobody wins here, Sarah. Nobody. We left that afternoon. I didn't let the kids say goodbye to her. I wasn't ready for that yet. Neither was she. The flight home was quiet. I sat between them, watching the clouds outside the window, feeling everything and nothing all at once. I thought I would feel relief. But mostly, I just felt empty. It's been 6 months now. The divorce is in progress. Sarah tried to fight for shared custody at first, but after everything I had on her lawyer convinced her to back down. She still calls. Sometimes she sounds angry. Sometimes she sounds sad. But mostly, she just sounds lost. Jason? He disappeared. Probably realized he was just another name on her list. The kids are okay. Better than I expected. They ask about her, and I tell them the truth in a way they can understand. As for me? I'm not sure. I don't think I'll ever be the same. I don't think I should be. But I do know one thing. I was drowning in that marriage. I just didn't see it until I finally came up for air,